sure that everyone keeps their cell phones either turned off, airplane mode, or vibrate. This way everyone can hear without distractions. Please be respectful and refrain from side conversations so everyone gets a turn. Excuse me. This work session will have an open session at the end, time permitting. And with that, we'll start the meeting for the board. Okay. We have the welcome and call to order done. What the hell is the list? I lost it again. What else is new? Okay. We have the old agenda. Old minutes. We need to take a look at and get approved. We need to get that taken care of with the corrections that we already made. Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get that next. Okay. With the agenda, with the previous agenda, do you have any questions from the board? If not, I have a motion to accept with the changes that we had.
What are the changes?
The changes was in the, on the minutes, I'm sorry. The minutes would show the only one item change on it was the distribution of funds for the Jrca boxes.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. Next item up will be, which is information only, which will be the Magna Road offer. And I'll turn that over to Jennifer with her having most of the information.
So on Magna Road, the board asked for an extension with the county, and they did go ahead and grant that. They granted it to August 14th to hear back if we accept or counter on the offer that they made us last month it was.
Okay.
And then in your packets, we compiled the responses that we received back from some of the homeowners. Out of 153 mailed out, we received 20 responses with different ideas and different, not requests, but different ideas that they had sent over. So you can kind of see how many people made a comment about each of those items. And, some people brought up a couple good ideas there that we hadn't seen before, the walkways for riding. And so now we're kind of, what does the board want to do next with this?
Okay, so we have this, we have the extension, so now just another, and we got the, everything back from our appraiser.
Yes.
Okay.
And they concur with
Concur with the county.
the county, yep.
Excuse me. Connie, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Tim?
I just think, this won't work. I just think we need to decide on what's the next process leading up to acceptance. I think we've got, input from the attorneys.
Mm-hmm.
We've got input from the homeowners. I think as a board, we just need to sit down and say, because as I understand what you said, Jennifer, is we can essentially ask for what we want.
You can.
We can ask for stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, we can ask for stuff. And maybe get together and look at some of these ideas and perhaps we ask them for some of these thoughts.
Put it in your counter and
See what they say.
do.
I guess that's what I would do.
Brittany?
We just need to get it done.
Okay.
At the end of the day, eminent domain is eminent domain, and we just need to get this done.
Okay. Allison?
I wonder what the board thinks of having Hazelwood come to our town hall meeting to explain one more time to the community that comes? Or should we just leave it alone? I'm just wondering what the rest of the board thinks. As far as I'm concerned, we've been talking about it for months. We've had town halls, the county's had town halls, we've been given an offer, we have a deadline. If the board's gonna counter, we need to counter and see what they use, get this resolved. We gave them 153 people had the opportunity to respond to a survey, 20 of them did, that's 13%. They've had opportunity after opportunity, and at this point, we just need to take action. It's a business decision that we have to make on their behalf, and we have 6,071 homes, and this is 153 of them, which is a very small percent of the community, and they've had their opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. Okay. Sandy?
No, I'm fine too.
Okay. With that said, I will ask that the board members turn into Robin their recommendations as far as both counteroffer and any recommendations from what the homeowners did, so we can have a decision and work through this by the open meeting at the end of the month. Okay? Okay. The next item up is I'm going to need Dana, if you would be so kind, and sign our code of conduct, please. Thank you, ma'am. Next item is on insurance and the insurance renewal. This process has been started back in March, and they've been working on it because of a few things that have been going on and some of the history within the community and some of the processes we have to go through. Not all the information has come back in time for your presentation today. I will turn this over to Robin for further information and then board discussion.
Excuse me, we did have a delay with some of the lost runs. The board as a whole, I believe I sent those and you have that information. If not, I will. I know I did send it to one board member, but we're very close. We're just waiting on one carrier to provide the information we need to have a complete matrix. Insurance renews July 1st, so there's really not a lot of discussion now, but what I will do the moment I have that matrix, we were promised it today, but we had one of the carriers that just was not able to get the answers they needed, because once they get their information, it goes to an underwriter. So they tried. We have time. So as soon as I get that, I'll send it to the board. I would ask that you would send me, and just me, don't copy the board, but send me any questions that you have. I will go to the professionals and get answers for you if it's not something that I know, so that we can be ready in the June 25th meeting to make a decision.
Thank you. Sandy, anything?
I have to admit that I'm not an insurance expert or anything, and so I was just a little concerned when it says due to our loss history. Has that been major?
Insurance companies, they're all very different in what they look at. We had some that just, number one, did not do planned developments such as this. That was one. Another one did not like when they researched Airbnb, so they denied. But yes, we have had some items that would be considered losses that maybe a company would not look at providing coverage. Some of it was because of the size of the community. So we had to do some real hunting. And I don't do insurance either, but I learned a lot of things through the process too, and working with the different carriers and how it works. And it's really interesting that as each individual carrier goes out and they're looking for coverage, once they've gone and they've snagged a particular company, that one's closed down. So by the time we get to, 6 and 7 carrier, it's a lot more difficult for them to find coverage because doors are closed because they've already been approached by prior carriers. So that's why we had to do some digging and finding some companies that had maybe a bigger pool they could pull from.
So it's insurance on the common areas, correct?
It's directors and officers, it's general
Okay.
liability,
Okay.
it's workmen's, yes, it's everything.
Okay, thank you.
Allison?
Does our current insurance not want to insure us anymore, or
No, actually, they
do?
are coatings. Yeah. That made me happy.
Yeah, that's a good sign.
Yes, it is. Brittany?
Nothing until we see the matrix.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Same thing?
And Connie?
Nope, I'm good.
Thank you very much. Once we get the information, if everyone could answer back individually, so we can get this information ready for the 25th, that'd be great. At this point, I'm going to turn the chair over to Dana to do the presentation on the design review updates, which has gone from a few pages to quite a few pages. And with that, the floor is yours, Dana.
So I don't know that it's necessarily a presentation. I just wanted to give a little bit of background about where these recommendations are coming from. Normally, the committee would do a recommendation and updates annually, but since the change in management companies, I don't believe it's been done in quite a while. So these suggestions are notes that the committee's been writing down for the past year or year and a half. And we finally compiled them all together to submit to you guys to approve. And the suggestions are coming up because it's things that are repeatedly coming up at every one of our meetings. So that's kind of the background on why the suggested changes are as written.
Okay. I know this started when I was chair on it. It's been a lot of fun going through a lot of them. So this started long before the January letter went out. January letter just happened to exacerbate the situation. Excuse me. Connie, do you have anything?
No, not right now. I haven't actually read through the whole thing, but I've read through most of it.
Okay, and you're happy with the recommendations as they stand
Yes.
from what you've heard?
Yes.
Thank you. Tim?
No, I appreciate Dana's answers to me, and I think she gave a very nice response, well thought out.
Thank you.
And I think it's been a while since it's really been looked at seriously. I think personally, looking at the 600 applications you receive now has really helped strengthen this whole thing. So I think you guys, committee did a good job. They should be commended on
Thank
behalf of the board.
I'll let them know.
Thank you, Brittany.
Yes, I have quite a lot.
Okay, go for it.
So, I agree with Tim, the committee's done a great job. A lot of this, I don't really have issue with, it's clarification, which is great. However, as I'm going through, the clarification stuff is fine, some of the things just to make it more standard. At the end of the day, I wanna see standard, consistent, and concise guidelines, so it's simple for people to understand. However, I'm in no way in favor of restrictive HOA governance. I believe these are our properties, these are our homes, this is a way for us to express ourselves, and at the end of the day, my intention as a board member is to improve the quality of life of everyone who lives here and keep our property values going up, and to keep the community looking nice. However, I don't think that we need to rule with an iron fist, and some of the stuff in here is crossing lines, in my opinion. I think we're going too far and too restrictive, and one of the reasons we chose Johnson Ranch compared to a lot of the neighboring HOAs is because they had some seriously restrictive stuff, down to exactly what kind of plant species you can have, and I think we're headed in that direction with some of these things. So a few that I've just noted, the first note that I made was actually under application procedure on page 5. I don't have a problem with putting must and adding a plot plan, but I think this was something maybe Tim even pointed out. If you're just getting paint or you're changing your front door, you wouldn't have a plot plan and some of this stuff, so maybe we need to just put if applicable, because I'm just thinking people are gonna look at that and go, what are you talking about? Or we need more than one form or something, because when I filled out my screen door one, I'm like, none of this applies to me, I just need you to tell me whether or not I can put this door on my house. So maybe make some kind of a form for the automatic approval, simple stuff. The next one that I noted is on page 8, decorative items. So first I'm looking through the whole packet, and on the last page, on page 16, we have water features, statuary, etc., which I guess I'm kind of confused on how is that different from the decorative items, and which thing then is going to apply, and maybe those need to be combined in some way. But I think the decorative items is a little bit too restrictive. We're getting to the point where we're micromanaging what exactly we can put on our house. And when you start to measure the items, I've seen, like if you have a 1-story house versus a 2-story house, and you want to put a couple of lizards that are a couple feet long next to each side of your door, and then on the top of your arch, you want one of those fun suns that's carved out in metal, you're now way over the limit, easily, with 3 items that aren't even that big and aren't gonna look cluttered and aren't gonna be, so, but if you have a 1-story home, maybe it would look a little cluttered, but at the end of the day, I guess I don't really care if your house looks a little cluttered. It's not permanent. It's something you can take off when you go to resell. It does not impact your neighbor's resale value. It does not do anything unless it's falling apart, dismantled, that kind of stuff. The yard arts, the yard items, because we have three large potted plants in our yard, or they don't even have plants in them, they're just decorative pots, and they fit the scheme of our house, but they're probably 2 feet tall. That right there is more than the 5-foot limit, and then I have a tiny little tortoise in a whole different section of my front yard. I'm now in violation of this new policy. Like, that, and then you're asking me to go get approval to put what's already there in my case, but even if I wanted to add another tortoise, I have to go get an approval to add a tiny little tortoise statue in my yard of cactus. I mean, it's just...
So Brittany, not to interrupt you, but just so you know, the way the committee looked at this was we were not looking to have people submit for these things that already have them. It has come up because there are some homes that have a lot of things to the point where it's too many, and the HOA office is getting complaints. And because we had nothing in the guidelines, we had to come up with something to put in here to be able to enforce. So what we did was we actually went out to all the neighboring communities and got copies of their guidelines and kind of combined from each one of those. Some of them were way restrictive, some of them were not restrictive at all. So we tried to come up with something that was kind of in the middle. The intent of the committee is not to, I don't want to say not to enforce it, but it's not like we're gonna say, oh, go out with a measuring tape and measure this stuff. It's to be used in a case where we do have an issue, meaning something has gotten to the point where it's way out of control, and now we have to have something where we can say, this is too much.
And I get that, and I guess I don't know exactly where the line is, and maybe instead of measurements and sizes, it needs to be just a quantity of items or something, because if you have the cute little rock of rivers and you put one of those little bridge things over it, I mean, right there, you're over, so it's so easy to cross the lines with this detailed of a guideline. And then you're creating more work for the design review committee or the office staff or whoever's gonna have to make that approval. And then, again, it comes back to limiting our ability to do what we want with our properties. And I understand it's an HOA, but I'm just trying to find that balance, that happy place. I think, and it's, some of this, yes, like we need to have some kind of guideline, but then okay, when you said we're not gonna go back to people who already have it, that was the whole point in the board's intention a few months ago of going out with that sweep saying, get every single thing approved so that we are all on the same page and have a baseline now. That immediately undoes that baseline, if that's the intent.
So we need something, so what is your suggestion?
I think a quantity, rather than the sizes and the 3, if it's no more than this much total, blah, that's just getting convoluted. So, if you want more than 7 items in your yard, you must get approval or something. I don't know what number you want to go with, but.
Just going back to a few cases that we've had recently, it has been requests for people that want to put up 1 item. However, the 1 item is literally the length of the size of their house. It's iron,
Mhm.
you know, art or whatever it is, but that's why we kind of try to combine the two, because if we say you can only have one, okay, well, somebody has one, but it's 20 by 20,
Yeah, so
it's hard, trust me.
under 5 feet, you know, 5 items under 5 feet, anything over 5 feet needs approval regardless of the quantity. You know, something to that effect, because I'm just looking at what's on my neighbor's houses and what's on, you know, what's in my yard and what I see that doesn't look bad, and almost everybody on my block is gonna get written up. Technically, I mean, even if you don't go back, I mean, but then how are you gonna know? How's compliance gonna know who has approval and who doesn't have approval if they're driving around at that point? See, that's kind of the problem. So I'll drop, that's where I'm at on that one. Then the exterior paint front doors, the board just approved letting people do this, and now we wanna go back and undo something that the community vocalized that was a need that they wanted. I'm in no way okay with that whatsoever. I was a big proponent of letting people paint the front door whatever color they want, the same with having a matching screen door, which I know comes up later. I think, with the yard ornaments and then under flags, I think we're getting into a murky area and it's a dangerous area when we say, 10 and still on 8. When we say that the inappropriate in nature as determined by the architectural committee and the board of directors, now we're responsible for managing feelings and what is and isn't appropriate. And I mean, you know, what if a Blue Lives Matter flag upsets somebody, or a Confederate flag upsets somebody, or a USA flag upsets somebody, and now we're supposed to, like, who's going to draw the line and how do we determine without getting sued?
It's actually.
I'm sure it did, and it needs to be determined, but I think that's ambiguous, and that gives 5 random people who change from time to time the ability to regulate morality. That's hard. So that's just a concern that I have on that, but it does need to be addressed, but that's just a concern I wanted to bring to everybody's attention. Gates, I'd like clarity on what gates shall be maintained as new condition. I mean, my wooden gate isn't in as new condition, but it's definitely not falling apart. What does that really, realistically, what does as new condition mean? You know, so just being clear on that. Outdoor lighting. I keep a blue light bulb in the light thing under my doorway because my son has autism and blue light stands for autism. Why can't I do that year round? Who is that bothering? Why does that need to be regulated to where I can no longer have a blue light bulb under my patio? You know, I mean, we're getting, again, into where I feel like you're being a little too restrictive. The screen doors on page 12, same issue with the front door. We just said, let your screen door match your front door, have some expression in this one little tiny area. Storage sheds on page 13, 5-foot setback, I think is too much. I think 1 or 2 feet, so you have room to get in there and do maintenance, and so it's not on the wall.
Minimum of 4.
Okay, then we go as low as the county will let us.
We did not change that though, it's always been 5.
I know, but it's in here, and I just wanted to mention it because it had come up to the board in homeowners wanting exceptions in the last couple months, and we allowed some. And so if we're gonna allow some, you know, we need to, if it's 4, then we need to make it 4, because that was a common complaint. That was when we were getting several exceptions requests that we granted. So if we can't go as low as 1, which I think is what we let somebody do, then, you know, we need to go to 4. Just, you know, be mindful of the fact that's constantly coming up as an issue. If we can change it, maybe we should. Let me see if there was anything. I think the only other thing was, then what are we doing with what's in the existing one? We have community rules where it talks about holiday guidelines, and it even references check holiday guidelines, but now there are no holiday guidelines. What are we doing with all that stuff that's now gone?
So Robin actually pulled those out.
Okay.
And Robin, you can maybe speak more on that. She's gonna edit them, but make them 2 separate documents rather than
Right.
combined, because it's technically not a design guideline. So we're just.
I like that. I just wasn't sure.
We can pull that line out that you mentioned so that it's not saying to refer to, or they
Something
can,
that's not
they
there.
can refer to the rules of regs.
Okay.
So that would just be a separate document, because there are some other changes that I've been tasked by the board to present.
Mhm.
So we just decided that's a separate document. We'll use as it is, also improvements on that, as well as what the board wants added.
Okay, that makes sense. I just was like, it's missing, but it mentions referencing it, so I just didn't know what happened to it, because I questioned. So yeah, those are the issues that I found in my first scan through.
Okay, thank you. Allison?
Yeah, being on the design review committee and also being a part of the board when the front door colors were changed, it's gotten out of control really fast. There's some just terrible color requests, and there's no way to do anything about it because of the way the current reads, no neon or no electric colors. But there's some seriously really bad color choices that are gonna bring the values of our homes down because it's just bizarre. And then also the screen doors, a bright blue screen door just looks ridiculous. So we're just trying to get it back to more desert colors. And on that note, Dana and I put together a book of muted colors of every primary color, just to give people choices still. There's plenty of choices, but to keep everything more desert related and more of the common colors.
There's still color choices, they're just maybe a few steps down muted, not, right now the rules say no neon, no electric. We have requests coming in where people are really pushing that envelope. I mean, if they're saying, well, this is not neon, it's a half a step below neon, and I can do it because technically it's not neon. So what we tried to do was kind of put something together that was halfway. I mean, there's a color wheel pretty much from every color, but it's just a little bit more toned down than what we've seen that are coming in.
Okay. Sandy?
I agree with several of the things that Brittany brought up. I think besides what she said, I found some typos that I don't know and some wording. Like on page 4, community organization, where it says every resident of Johnson Ranch is a member of the Johnson Ranch Community Association. Is that correct? Because shouldn't it be every homeowner is a member of the association? A renter is not a member of the association.
Excuse me. And you're correct that it is the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
From what I'm seeing here, that's part of the original document that was there. That wasn't part of any changes. We can take a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, it could say every home, that'd be for this purpose, because
Right,
it's,
right.
you know, discussing the home, I like home, that could be a good note.
Or just owner.
Owner,
Yeah.
I just
You know,
say
because
owner.
it is the owner that has to get the approval for things.
So every homeowner maybe?
Yeah, homeowner or owner. And then there's another place in the design review process too, where it says residents with proposed changes should contact the management company.
Where's that
I
at?
don't think residents are allowed to make the changes, are they?
Make a request.
Page 5.
Yeah, but a renter can't request to make a change on a home, can they?
No, but the application has to be signed by the homeowner, so I don't know if
Yeah.
there's change that, I mean, if they drop it off and it's signed by the homeowner, I think we can accept it, right, Robin?
Yeah, I mean, as long as,
Come directly from owner, that just keeps everything kosher.
So, I agree. I don't think changing that term hurts at all. Owners is a better word. Owners are residents, but in order to clarify, like Sandy is saying, owners is a good word to use. So I see that change on page 4, first sentence, and I see that change on 5. We can also go through and see if there's anywhere else under design review process. We can also change sentence 2.
yeah, I'd do a control F and just replace everything that says residents with owner.
And because it does, farther on down, it says any owner requesting approval of the committee shall follow the application, so. And then one other thing is down here on page 5, where applications may be obtained from the association office or downloaded from the website at myjohnsonranch.org. That is not a valid email address or a valid website address. That's no longer, that's what it used to be when, before Mr. Haig, our president at the time, got the johnsonranch.com website. But myjohnsonranch.org is non-existent. So, and I don't know, maybe I'm just being anal, but the word amongst just doesn't sound right to me. Isn't among? I mean, I know amongst is a word, but it's very, very, very rarely used.
Where are you at, Sandy?
Where are we? Page 6, general principles, 6th line.
those qualities include a harmonious relationship amongst,
Oh, okay, there we go.
among structures would sound more normal and natural, but it's right either way, but yeah, among. So,
I think that's about all I have.
Okay. Again, I thank you. Do you have anything you want to put on this? And do you have the notes from everybody's input so far? Okay. Excuse me.
So, Bob,
I'm sorry, go,
I have a
yes.
question. So like at this point, is this something where like the directors, should it go back to the committee or should the directors just sit here and figure out, not necessarily right this second, but figure out exactly what we want to do to clarify some of these things? Or does the committee need to go back and touch it again and then us, because that's just getting redundant?
I don't think the committee's done it, and we've been back and forth, over, revised, revisited. I think at this point, we just need to get something approved and
Okay.
put it out.
Okay.
Maybe not today, but the board needs to make a decision. The committee is gonna go with whatever the board says anyways. I just think we should just get it done at this
Can
point.
we vote on this in the next meeting, have everybody send me, or you send me the changes, we agree? I think Brittany's gonna have to send some specifics for the decorative portion that she wants maybe included, but I think that,
Well, does everybody agree with the changes that Brittany's recommending? I mean, or do we?
I haven't really recommended anything specific.
Well, I guess I'm just questioning, does anybody else have issues with them as written that they want changed, or?
I think the decorative things is just a little extreme the way it's written now. Little, too. I understand where you're coming from,
Yeah,
but
since-
you don't want a whole wall covered
Right.
with.
Yeah.
Right,
And like I said,
and
we
before I
did-
stepped off that committee, there were a few that came in that literally covered, like Dana said, the entire
We've had
wall.
quite a few.
Or it was, gaudy would be nice.
Yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, we took a bunch of different ones, we tried to combine them and come up with something, but if the board feels like they need to be lessened, then.
Maybe not quite as restrictive, you know what I'm saying? Kind of like what Brittany was talking about.
So increase the number to like 5 or 6, is that what you're looking at?
Well, let's do this then. Dana, if you have all the notes from all the discussion points so far, before we go out to the community, could you come up with a kind of I don't know the right word, a sheet that says this page, this item, this is what was in the recommendations, this is what the board and the community discussed, this is what the final, this is what we recommend, and have it ready for the 25th, or prior to the 25th, so we can actually put this to bed?
Well, yeah, I can, but is the only thing that I'm proposing the decorative items? I need to know what else everybody's thinking.
Why don't,
The blue light.
yeah, the light, the outdoor lights.
The reason,
Can I-
for the
can
colored
I make a
lights,
suggestion?
actually,
One at a
Can I
time.
make a suggestion? And
Yes,
that
Tim.
is, Brittany, sounds like you haven't had a chance yet to really dig into this thing.
I've looked over it twice, these were the notes that I've
And
come up with.
that's it, so you're comfortable with those?
Everything else is pretty standard, just clarification. These are the things I felt were over the line.
Okay, so decorative items, the light,
Outdoor lighting,
the front door.
yeah, the front door and screen doors, maybe, there's a halfway point between just exactly what someone liked and picked out versus, if I have a similar shade of blue left over and I wanna paint my front door the blue that I painted inside and it's almost the same color, can't I just paint it blue,
Well, and yes, I don't think the committee's looking to be unreasonable. If it's close to something that's in the book, the problem that we're having right now is the extreme.
Yeah.
We are getting requests that,
And to be fair, when we did it as a board, it was kind of someone brought us something, we discussed it, and then electric neon was like the only thing we could come up with at that time to allow for some freedom. But if that's too free, then we can pull it in. But we wanted to avoid, at that time, the board's discussion was avoid a hand-selected book of already pre-approved things.
well,
Yep.
and just
Okay,
one more
let's-
comment on that, Bob, just so you know, the committee's intent with that was they keep referring back to, we need to look at what Johnson Ranch was originally designed to be. And they understand that we need to also evolve with the times, but they said, the community was put out so that the desert and the natural nature was the focal point. So now we're they feel like we're getting to a point where we're almost making it too free.
Okay. With that, and I'll get back to you in just a second. If everyone can get their material into Robin for any changes, annotate the page and the item, we'll get that finalized and pushed back out for the committee for the board to do it final at the end of the month. One thing from you, then I'll go out to the committee real quick.
Okay, with the outdoor lighting, I don't know that it's a porch light that's really the problem, but what the problem is the carriage lights on driveways. A lot of people have bright teal, bright green all year long, and it just looks trashy and like Christmas lights. So that's why it was put back to clear or yellow. It's not necessarily, if you have blue for autism, I don't know if we have to go to the committee for that or if we can just say porch lights are okay. But the driveway lights as you're driving through neighborhoods that are teal and green and all that is the reason that was in there.
If we could get that added on. Is there anything from the community? Yes, sir.
On the decorations, that's been a nightmare. And if we make it 5 things or whatever, we're gonna have somebody with 400 little snakes on the front of their house. And I'm not kidding you, this is the type of stuff we have. This is the reason we beat ourselves to death on this. This isn't just something we threw at you guys randomly. We have been over this. I'm a big proponent of bend over backwards for the homeowner. We're there to help them, not to be the Nazi. But we have to be something you call restrictive with it, or these people will go nuts with it. And now I can't tell this guy he can't have 30 snakes on the front house. They're little. They're only a half a square foot each. You gotta have boundaries or people will take advantage of it. And same thing with the porch light. You get a blue one, everybody's gonna want a purple, green, we'll be back to the Christmas lights. That's why we want that kind of stuff.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Just so you know, the green lights have significance as well. It has to do with, I believe, soldiers, something with veterans. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. But that's a big deal that was done through Walmart. It's nationwide. So you've got to think of those things. If you're allowing blue, you've got to allow the green.
What does the teal mean?
I don't know, but there could, so when you're thinking of your standard, all I'm saying is, if it has a significance like that, you might want to build in a little exception.
And we'll take that into consideration as we get the finalization done. Yes, ma'am.
I agree that it would be nice to say the carriage lights should remain white or clear, except for the holiday season, put red and green in then, and then let the porch lights be various colors, because people don't have their porch lights on every night, but they usually have those carriage lights on every night.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I think that with the green, it is to do with veterans, but I thought it was just one day.
I think
No,
it's
it's-
PTSD.
Is that what, okay, it's something
Our
about
neighbor has it.
And it's only one light, it's not like all 3 of them.
One day, like in November, it seemed like
It's not just one day, but it's some time period and everything, so just a heads up, there's stuff like that is out there.
We'll have that research and we'll take a look at
Yeah.
that, but thank you all very much for that. Okay, and again, Dana, if you could get that together and make sure and everyone else, make sure you get your information in so we could have it finalized for the end of the month meeting. The next item up is on the vandalism reward policy, and I'm gonna turn this over to Robin real quick, and then we'll get into that.
So before our time here, this is not something new. Apparently this vandalism reward has been out there. It just hasn't been utilized. So when we went to look for it with the attorney's help, they were having a hard time locating what had originally been signed. So because this is something the board wants to implement, we thought it would be a good idea to make sure it was rewritten with any changes the attorney thought, especially in today, anything that he thought should be added. So there is the initial policy. What page is that on? Okay, so 25 is the initial policy. Let me get there. And then past that, there is an actual letter that would go out to the owners so that they know that this is available. And the biggest thing to note on this is that the reward isn't given unless the person is brought to prosecution, but the hope with this is that maybe it would spark an interest in people reporting things that they see, because that's just a huge problem here. people are very upset these things are happening, but when we don't know who it is that's destroying dog stations, or they're pulling all the bags out, or worse, they're burning things throughout the community, we have no recourse. Zero way to tell who that is. So the board felt that this would be a good idea to implement this again and make it knowledgeable. And then also a flyer. We can do whatever we want to do on this flyer, that's on page 28, but we want to put this up on all of our bulletin boards in conspicuous places so that homeowners would see this and know, especially some of the bulletin boards where they're in the common areas where a lot of things are happening. This would be really good to post here and maybe encourage that as well.
Thank you. I'll start with Tim on this one.
I'm fine. I think we need to get this thing out to the community, and the policy's been reviewed by the attorney. It's been approved once by the board. I'd say let's officially approve it again and get it out there and get going.
Okay. Cut this down a little bit. I'll just open it up to anybody else on the board. Anyone else have any
I
comments?
just have one comment.
Yes, ma'am.
So if somebody sees somebody doing vandalism, whatever, don't we want them to call the police? And then report it to the board after?
Yes, so that's absolutely the first thing that they would want to do is report it to the police, then they'll come to us.
Okay.
Right, so it might be difficult for them sometimes to know who it is, but if it actually goes to the police and comes to fruition with prosecution, yeah, that's when the reward happens.
So we could add that number on the sign that's going to be posted out there. We'll put that and then bump that down.
And please say to the sheriff's office, because we don't have police.
1 minute, please.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
You're right.
I'm ready for it to get started because we're just getting too much vandalism and.
Yeah, we've had enough already, and some has just started. No one else from the board, anyone from the committee, from the community? If not, let's get, I move that we get this going, although,
Oh, Bob,
sorry.
you do have.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you, sir.
Just quickly, without great detail, it sounds like this is an increasing problem. Can you give us kind of a brief summary of what kind of stuff you're seeing now, so we kind of know what to look for?
Well, there's been a few items since I've been president of the board. One is around Red Road, which is Red Road and Hunt Highway. Someone had decided to come in one night and literally destroyed all the white picket fence. And they destroyed it in such a way that it ended up in some of the people's property, over the wall. We had people decide they thought it would be great to rip down all the dog stations in certain areas. So we're trying to encourage people not turning in, but reporting the shackle boxes as well. Thank you. We've had that, we've had those things. That's why we're trying to get people to be more proactive.
This is possibly theft.
It's more damage than it is. It's more damage than theft. Whether it's youth or adult, I don't know and don't care. I just want it to stop, just like everyone else in the community does. Okay? Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, I just didn't know if we're seeing a lot of graffiti or what type of stuff.
Graffiti, not that I know of, but we
We
might.
just take care of it when it happens. We go and paint over and.
Yes.
Is there, they have those homeowner watch or neighborhood?
You talking about Neighborhood Watch?
Yeah, I mean, do we get one?
That is something that's done by that local area. That's not done by Johnson Ranch. But it's an excellent
You
thought.
if you want a block watch, you can contact the sheriff, and they will come out and talk to your neighborhood or something about.
And it's usually like Greens 1 would form a group, Greens 2 would form, and I'm using the Greens because they come to mind. Not that I'm picking on them. It just comes to mind. Each section would have their own. So you could end up with umpteen million, but that's fine as long as we get, if everyone wants to do that. Anyone else?
Yeah, Trista Costello was very active at one point in time. I don't know if she still is or not, but she was very active in terms of, in fact, I think she had a website at one point in time for kind of neighborhood watch stuff. So she's well aware of what's required.
She doesn't live in our community anymore.
Oh, she doesn't know? Okay.
No, she moved down by Florence.
Okay, thank you. With that, although it's an information only, I'd like to turn this over into a action item, and if we can get a motion, a second, and a quick approval of it, we'll get this thing moving so we can get people taken care of.
I'll make a motion to approve the Johnson Ranch Community Association reward policy for vandalism.
Thank you, and a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Approved. Next item, Tim, I'm going to turn this over to you on the financial statement audit.
Sure. Basically, every year we hire an outside company, a CPA, who does a detailed audit for Johnson Ranch. This is a complete audit in terms of going out to the banks to make sure the money's there, going to suppliers to check to make sure that they exist, that they're not, it's not every supplier, but it's a random sample to make sure that the money's not going to a false supplier. They go into First Service and review their process in terms of financial controls to make sure that it meets the appropriate standards in terms of accounting standards. And they put together this document that basically says we're okay. It has the balance sheet, it has trial balance, it has some what they call adjusting entries, which is really just moving money from one account to the other, not changing the money, just being more clear in terms of where the money should be put. So basically, I would make a motion, and if you were here last year, we actually had the man come out and he did a super bang-up job in terms of he's a pretty humorous guy, explaining what the audit was all about. I can't do any injustice with that. But for this purpose, I would recommend that we approve the audit as submitted, the draft audit as submitted.
Okay.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion from the board.
I do have a question, but it's not really regarding this, but it is regarding the financial statements. Through October of 2018, the entire financial statement with balance sheets and everything was posted to the website. And then in October, November, and December, and all of this year too, it's just the, what do you call it, Tim?
Executive summary.
Yeah.
Executive summary.
And I was wondering why that change happened. Can somebody?
I believe that was what we were reporting and showing in meetings. I think we just decided that that's what was loaded. It's an easy change if the board wants. I think it's like 9 to 12 pages, depending on the activity. It will take a little bit to do that. It takes some time to go and load actually have to save those pages as a PDF and then load them. But if that's what the board wants, we can maybe start now moving forward, and then when I have some time I can go back and reload the other pages.
I think it's just a little bit more open to the homeowners, you know, being able to see where the reserve money is and everything.
Sandy, that's great, and we'll get into that in just a second.
Okay.
I'd like to finish.
Okay,
the
sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the board? If not, anyone from the community? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor? Okay, and we need to sign that tonight, ma'am?
You and Allison Lynn as
Welcome to my life, Sandy. Welcome to my life. And as far as the item you brought up, Sandy, that's an excellent point. I'm not gonna go in for discussion on it. If we can do that, and manager can do that without a whole bunch of time, we'll just get it done.
Okay.
Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that's fair.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The only thing I'd like to limit it to is the the balance sheet and the P&L. Okay? That's all right. I don't want to put out bank account information.
Oh, no, that's not, I don't know if you've seen what's been on before.
Oh,
Just go into the website and look, anywhere
yeah, I can go and
January.
find it, yeah.
January through September of 2018.
It's like the first 9 to 12 pages.
Yeah,
just a
so
description of
exactly,
operations.
that's fine, yeah.
In the beginning of the year, there's fewer pages, of course, than there is later in the year. but-
So I like that idea. I'm just curious, would that then be open to literally anyone, anywhere in the world? And is that a problem? Because I'm not sure exactly where you're saying it is.
It's in the FSR Connect.
Okay, so it is, you have to log into
You
it.
have to log in to see it.
Then, yeah, absolutely, I think that's fine.
Okay, great. Next item up is information only. Homeowners' email is forwarded to the board by the general manager. I'll start with the general manager and then go to the board members.
This was actually an item that a board member had requested be placed on, and because I did have some questions for the board. So what happens is a homeowner has questions, and the moment they send it to me and ask me to send it to you as the board, I do. But there seems to be this expectation, which we all understand, that the board would answer them. However, that is the prerogative of the board. So what I'm proposing, if okay with the board, is that when a homeowner sends me an email that they're asking to be forwarded to you, I would like to have a canned response. That sounds cold and I don't mean it to, but that would basically say to them, your email has been forwarded, something to the effect of, please do not expect a response from the board. However, they will take your ideas under advisement, and then say the board receives it and they think that there's a great topic in what they're talking about. We then, as a board, you can say, hey, let's put that on a work session and talk about it. My follow-up to that homeowner would be, by the way, the things that you were asking about will be a topic on the June 25th meeting. I want to be able to at least let homeowners know so they don't sit there thinking that there's going to be an answer from the board, because that's not how we operate. I would also explain that they could come to an open forum and share what they wanted as well.
Thank you, and with that, one thing as a reminder for everybody in the community and the board cannot answer as an individual, we have to answer as a board. And we cannot sit down and go through an area that could possibly put us in jeopardy and the community in jeopardy by exchanging emails as a group. Therefore, it comes to us as an individual, we have to answer back to the general manager so that we keep the procedures clean. And that's the only reason why you don't see a lot of answers from the board members individually, because we're trying to protect both the community and the board at the same time. With that, I'll turn this over for anything from you, Connie.
I guess what Robin is proposing would be something. My feeling is if somebody in the community is taking the time to send an email, we owe them something. Not just go, oh, okay. I know if I submitted an email, I would want somebody to respond to me and say, Robin, like you said, please come to the next open session, or this has been, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to feel like I'm being ignored. That would be my only input.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
I think there are two kinds of questions that I've seen in emails. One is questions that Robin can really answer, that are just really operational in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the email may say come to the board, at least part of the question may be clear, and that should be answered.
Absolutely.
Stuff that does require a board decision, I think what Robin is recommending is a very good recommendation. It says this requires a board decision, the board will discuss it in an open session or whatever you say, some appropriate language like that. I think it's fine.
Side note to that, for instance, the Magma Road, we had a lot of people expressing opinions, so there wasn't an answer from me, and quite literally, there wasn't an answer from the board either, other than to let them know the board will take it under advisement. So that's if you're all okay with that, I will let them know that, but I will always do a follow-up. If you as the board hit back and say, hey, yes, let's add this to the next meeting, I'm gonna follow up with that homeowner and let them know this will be a topic of discussion, but they'll also know they can come to any open forum and address the board as well.
Okay, Brittany?
Yeah, what you guys are saying is pretty right on. You need some kind of response so they don't just sit there and wonder if their email ever got seen there, or if it just went straight to spam. But it does need to be fairly generic because, again, even in open session when you speak, we don't necessarily respond. It may not be an answer to your question, and a lot of the emails we do get are just, I don't like this. There's not a response to that, you know, I mean, we take it into consideration, but what do you want me to say? And you don't need to get 100 emails back on that. So yeah, some kind of pretty, straightforward thing, and then of course, come to open forum. And if they want it read at an open forum, they would need to, I guess, share that in their email if it's something they can't come to, but they want the community to hear it. You're gonna have to be pretty specific in the email if you're wanting something specific like that. Communication it's an ongoing challenge between the homeowners and the board, between the board members. I don't think there's a great solution yet, but I think this is a good step.
Thank you. Sandy?
Yeah, I have to agree with Brittany also, is that if a person can't make the meetings, and obviously we have a lot of homeowners that can't make meetings, that if they wish to have it presented to the board in open session, I think at least we should hear it, and perhaps, maybe be able to come up with an answer of some kind, or at least a recognition that we got that. And
Sandy, to your point, the thing, for instance, if there's something where you feel like a homeowner has a genuine question and they can't make the meetings, because the minutes are posted, they would see that it had been addressed and maybe, some specific, verbiage from the board. So
right.
I like that as well.
Yeah?
I agree. I think there's no way for us to respond as a board because you're gonna get 7 different answers and there's no way for Robin to combine them and send them out. So I think what you're
Yeah.
proposing is a good middle ground.
Allison?
I agree. I'd like to see the wording say something like the entire board appreciates the time you took to send in your questions and concerns, and while they can't respond individually, they have been sent the email. Something to that effect. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, anything from anyone, anything from the community on that? Okay, next item up is the volunteer force. That is something that had come up from the community, and I'm gonna let, since that deals with liability and we had to deal with some legal things just to make sure we could cover it, I'm gonna turn that over to Robin for real quick, and then we're gonna get started.
So I'm actually really excited about this because there's a lot of things that go on in the community, and we have homeowners, some even sitting here tonight, that have suggested a volunteer program. Of course, the first place my brain went was liability, and I did look into that and found out that as long as it is a board-sanctioned force, committee, whatever, I'm proposing that this would be called a volunteer force. Anyone who is a part and becomes a part of that volunteer force would be covered under the general liability coverage. So it is definitely something that I am asking the board to consider. So I did have some questions, why would you need a chairperson? How is this different from previous? And we have not used homeowner volunteers. We've used board members who are already covered, but we haven't actually used homeowners at our events. And we would like to be able to have that available to homeowners who want to volunteer. But because we need to make sure it's board sanctioned and kind of give the homeowners a little skin in the game and kind of make sure that they are involved, we want an application process. We would like for the board to be able to look at those applications and the people, why they want to be involved. And we could have a list of 10 and the board can say, yes, let's have those 10. As far as a chairperson, it would be great to have a person that acts as a liaison between management and lifestyle and the committee as a whole. For instance, there's a budget for holiday decorations. They could, pick someone or themselves to research pricing and stuff for decorations and bring that back to the committee. I would suggest we meet either bi-monthly or quarterly. I suggest bi-monthly because with activities, Corey would be able to let everyone know in the committee what's needed, but then we also have an opportunity to talk about opportunities. A side note that's really important to know on this board, on the actual events where there are kids involved, any volunteer that wanted to participate would need a background and fingerprinting. Approximately $75, so we would need to build that into the budget. We wouldn't necessarily have to have, let's say we have 30 volunteers. We don't need all of them to be fingerprinted and background checked if they're going to be decorating committee. It's just if they want to be involved with the actual events where children are involved, we would need to offer, my thoughts are that we would pay for that. It's a little bit hard to ask a volunteer to go spend $75 to have this background, so that does need to be a consideration as well.
Thank you. On that, Sandy, do you have anything?
So would this be like the landscape committee, except it would be, so.
Very much like that. We would want to hold meetings. We would want minutes from the meetings, like a chair, so that it's, this probably isn't the right word, but like the volunteer force would understand that they're a legitimate group. I mean, they're a true value to the community. And the meetings, background checks, choosing a chair and just getting them involved, whether it's decorating or whether it's a community event, we can still pull from that same, with obviously stipulations for anyone that wants to work the family events.
I expressed in my email, the only concern that I would have is the line between whether it's a volunteer for an event or I love the idea of a decorating committee. What I'm fearful of is that you're gonna have people that decide, oh, well, I'm on the decorating committee, I'm gonna go string some lights over here and string some lights over here and some lights over here. I love the idea of decorations. I'm big in decorating, but we have to have, I love that the committee would come, bring suggestions, bring a budget, bring pricing, but I think that we need to keep in mind, we need to have it cohesive and kind of.
Management would oversee.
That would be my only concern, but I think it's a great way to get more people involved. We need more people involved.
Would it need a board liaison like the other committees?
I would strongly suggest.
We're running out of board members. Kidding, I just volunteer for everything. I'm not, no. Yes, Bob.
Brittany?
What does Corey think?
She's really excited about it. We did have the discussions that this would not be a group of people that are all of a sudden going to start creating activities and whatnot, and evidenced by how she's amped up the activities, we wouldn't need that. However, the committee is more than welcome to make some suggestions. Corey is never shut off to ideas, but she's excited about having a volunteer pool that she can pull from for activities.
Okay. I really like it. High level is where I'm at with it. I haven't put a whole lot into it. I like what you're pitching. I really like the idea of a volunteer committee that handles the decorations. Like, I think because that's such a huge undertaking and because we are a huge community and we could do a lot of really cool stuff if we have the right budget, we have the people and the creativity. I love the idea of getting homeowners involved. I don't love the idea of homeowners volunteering for events with children and having to get fingerprints and background checks and adding, I'm not closed off to it, but I'm hesitant on that one. I think this would have to be a committee that is very well defined and outlined and has a lot of structure, because otherwise I could see this blowing up into a huge problem and I could see it blowing up into something wonderful. So that I guess I'm saying, yes, we should continue to look into this, I'm not ready to say, absolutely, I'm 100% on board, do what you want.
That's where a charter would come in. So I would be creating a charter, and we can work on that all day until we're all comfortable on it.
Okay.
Tim?
Yeah, as long as we're treating this as a committee with the charter and all the rules that we've established for the committee, I think that makes a lot of sense. Just a question, the face painting people that are at the events, are they background checked?
They have all their licensing in place, but background, I'm not sure, I'd have to ask Corey. I can get that answer for you, I just don't have that.
Yeah, I think we need to be consistent in terms of
Absolutely.
any, is that, yeah, I mean.
I think it's very fair. Are all of our
Wherever-
pool attendants, or, like, I guess I.
Yes, they are.
We should,
They are.
yeah.
Because they man the little things,
Yeah,
well, I
they're all-
figured that,
Yeah,
but,
they're all checked.
yeah.
I'm concerned about,
Yeah.
you know,
The
the
vendors.
face
But
painting
then outside
vendors, some of the
vendors,
vendor, that interface with
I'll get
kids.
with Corey and
I wanna make sure that it's worth the $75 to make sure that they are back. But yeah, I'd say let's see the charter and move forward from there. It's no problem with writing the charter.
Okay, Bonnie?
So, I'm all for it. I mean, if our big thing is get people involved, people are willing to get involved, and Rob and I'd be more than happy to help you with the charter and the
Awesome.
formation of
Okay.
the requirements.
You love to volunteer.
Huh?
I love that she
I
does.
love it.
So you want to be the chair?
Bob already told me no.
Liaison, Connie.
Liaison.
Yes.
I would volunteer for the liaison for that committee.
Once we get it all set up, okay? Okay, do we have anything from the community? Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate you guys taking that into consideration. I will be throwing my name in there.
I understand. Once we get the charter approved, we'll put it out for everyone to put in for an application on it. We'll figure out the size of the group, whether it's going to be limited to a certain amount or freewheeling. We'll get all that figured out, and then we'll get that started and get you going. Okay? And thank you for offering that. We appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am.
Fun.
Yeah, we need some fun committees.
Yeah.
Not that they're not all sort of fun in their own way, but this one's like really fun. What other fun ones can we come up with?
Coming up.
It's like, Brittany wants to be the president.
Okay, next item up is an action item, which is for our maturing CDs. I'm gonna leave that with both the treasurer and the general manager to present, and then we'll go from there.
Tim, go ahead.
We've got some CDs that are coming due, so First Service has made some recommendations that I'd like to get approved, and let me try and explain what's going on here, because money's moving around. But it all balances out, we're not losing any money. What's happening, first of all, in the operating fund, we agreed that we were going to take $750,000 and split it between the capital improvement fund and the reserve fund. I believe 125 into the reserve, and the balance, whatever that is, 6.
It's on that form.
625, yeah, 625 into the capital improvement fund. So that will reduce the operating fund in terms of cash. And at the same time, the recommendation is to take some of the money that we have in the money market fund and put it into a short-term CD to get a little bit better return on our investment, going from 1.75 to 2.40% for a 6-month CD. So we'll still have flexibility in terms of accessing that money if we should have to access that money. Again, our investment policy is always CD, so everything is protected. There's no exposure in terms of loss of this money. The next set of CDs is the capital improvement fund, and basically what we're doing there is putting a total, well, we're putting the 625 into there plus the 300,000 we have already, and we're creating a CD ladder. A CD ladder just says you you buy CDs at different time periods, and then as the newest CD matures, you roll that, and if you don't need the money, you roll that into the farthest out CD. So you just keep rolling the money. That way you're able to take advantage of interest rates as they go up and down. And we don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's always better over time to try and balance out that. So this is just a laddered CD, which is what we've been doing with the money as it comes due. The next set of funds, again, we have our reserve funds, and there are three different reserve funds: the Master Reserve, Lakeview, and Stonegate. So in terms of the Master, we're taking the 125,000, putting that into the reserve accounts. We're taking again laddering CDs into three CDs of 18, 24, and 36 months, all of which are $500,000 apiece. And then for the Stonegate, we're moving some money from the money market into a short-term CD, 12-month CD. So there'll be for Stonegate a 12-month CD at 2.4% and a 24-month CD at 2.45% that we're going to put in place. And finally, for Lakeview, very similar kind of thing. We're moving money from a money market. We're putting, we're creating a new CD that will be 12 months for 2.45%. So that is what we are doing. Any questions?
Any questions from any?
Or I make a motion that we approve the recommendations to move this money to the appropriate CDs.
I'll second that.
Any discussion from any member of the board? Hearing none, anything from the community? Yes, sir.
Yeah, these are all with the same institution?
No, we buy, Morgan Stanley goes out and shops these so that because we can't have more than $250,000 with any one institution. So they go out and look across the whole country and put together packages that will give us the best rates and not expose us to FDIC situation. So we're all insured.
So they are insured?
Yeah, they're insured as multiple banks that we could.
Thank you.
Okay, not seeing anything from anyone else. All those in favor? Motion's approved. We have two items left on the thing. I'm going to go into one item real quick, then we'll go into item J. Just as a friendly reminder for everybody, on June 20th, here in this room, we will have the town hall again. With this being fire season, and with that comes the flood season directly right after that, and with everything that's been going on with, believe it or not, the Design Review Committee, we've invited Mr. Charles Comet, who is the County Emergency Manager, to give a presentation. I know that's going to be put out on Constant Contact and everything else, but for everyone that's here, I wanted to make sure that they knew that was going to be going on the 20th right here that night. The last item we have up for now is a discussion, information only, on the negotiation plan on our contracts. I'd like to personally thank right now, in front of everybody, both Tim and Connie. I'd like to thank both Tim and Connie. They have put a lot of effort into helping us establish at least a footprint to get started. What I'd like to do is take a look at the multicolored, because I can't tell the colors, the multicolored sheet, one-page sheet, first to make sure we understand only the item of what's our item number, in other words, what's going to be how we explain, so we're all on the same sheet of music as we get this thing ready. Our terms for contract team, what's our priority? Is that a priority on the sheet? Is that a priority on negotiation? If you understand what I'm saying there, what are we looking for exceeds, for meets, so we can get this set up and get this ready to go. I'll turn this over.
Is this a sample then?
This is a sample, yes. I will turn this over to Connie as she started this off first, and we'll go from there.
Okay, so yeah, just quickly on the template that everybody got from Bob. So the one on here highlighted in yellow, it is an actual contractual term, but it's just for an example, right? So I was trying to say, okay, this is the contractual obligation we have today. You know, what would be our exceeds position? What would be our meets position? So that's kind of the input we're looking for from everybody. So as you go through the contract, if there's something specifically in the contract, we can add it on here, and then we can determine as a board which items we want to negotiate and which items we don't.
Okay. Thank you for that, Connie. Kim?
Yeah, I'd like to just go through and make sure we all have a common understanding of the definition of each of these headings. So, item number, I think, is pretty straightforward. That's just the item in the contract.
Right.
Or if you have a new item, just give it a number, I guess, right? You may have a new term that's not in the item, that's not in the contract right now. So, and then the contract term would be what's in the current contract right now, right? The priority, I think we need a definition of what we mean by priority. So again, I'll throw out something. Okay, to me, item number one, which you put there, is must have that will walk away if the agreement is not achieved with the number one priority item. Number two would be we can trade it off for other terms.
Right.
So you know, we may do some trade-offs between those different terms. And a number three priority would be nice to have, and we just use that in our trade-off process. So those are my suggestions for what I would define as priorities. Open to the board for other definitions, but we need to make sure we're looking at, when we put a priority, we're looking at it the same way.
And I can add those on to this and resend it out. That's fine. Priority level.
Yeah, then in terms of contract obligation, that's right from the contract. What does it currently say in the contract? The exceeds positions is fine. Exceeds means what our best desire would be. Our best realistic desire, that's the way. It's gotta be realistic. It can't be First Service is gonna give us for free, you know, I mean, that's not real.
No, free's not real.
No, it's not real. Best realistic, or the highest realistic desire is what I always interpret exceeds to be. Meets to be is what we would be comfortable for to what I call a win-win situation. In other words, both First Service is getting something out of this, and we're getting something out of this.
So what we'll accept.
What we'll accept, so.
Yeah.
And then I would add a column called minimum position, which is if we don't get this, we got a problem. That's absolute minimum what we would accept in terms of the contract. So you really have a range. You have the exceeds is the highest, minimum is the lowest, and then meets is what you really are comfortable with and negotiate something.
Yeah, I think the terminology we used at Intel was does not meet.
Yeah, yeah, it does not mean exactly. The minimum, we use minimum, so high, low, minimum, whatever. And then the other column I'd like to add into this is a little brief explanation of why you're saying this. What's your logic? Not that you just like to have it, but if you're saying, you know, my meets position is 20 cents or something here.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that's a reasonable? Because the negotiating team is going to have to go in with the arguments.
Exactly.
So the board needs, that has to be what do we as a board think are reasonable arguments for this particular position.
Okay.
Once we consolidate it.
Okay.
Okay, I can add all that and resend this to you, Bob.
Thank you, Nick. Brittany, do you have anything on this? Anything? Okay. Allison?
What does the owner column mean?
Who,
brought it up, right?
who brought it up, so we know
Who's
gonna defend
on that
it.
one?
Yeah,
Who's gonna defend it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess we don't really need to do date on that.
Okay, Andy, thanks, Andy. Anything on this sheet?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
That helped a lot.
Okay. With that, we have the two-page document, only because if I shrunk it anymore, none of us would be able to read it. This came mostly from Tim, and he and I had a long conversation over this one night, and we were saying the same thing, but couldn't get the other person to actually understand what the other person was saying. So Tim says, I'll write something up for you, and I thank you very much for that, Tim, because it's exactly what we're looking for. With that, Tim, if you'd like to go over that real quick.
Yeah, all this is the steps in the process coming up to final results. So I'll quickly run through them. Tonight we're doing it right now. We're looking at the format of the negotiating plan, and we reach agreement as a board to what that format will be. Also going to tonight just go through the plan, the steps in the process, and make sure that we've got all the right steps. The next big thing, so that'll take us through step 5, okay? Then what will happen is Connie will distribute this the negotiating plan project format, and with the updates. Then on number 7, each member should review the contract, and in 8, each member create what they want as these terms. So, and plus, if you want to add a term to the contract that isn't there, you need to put it in there. Then on step 9 is obviously Bob will send all the stuff to Bob, and he'll put it together. And then step 10, Bob will just distribute a consolidated list of all the terms that the board comes up with. Step 11 is we meet, so we have to meet together, and want to do that in executive session because we may require legal advice and maybe talking on personnel reasons to agree on this final negotiating matrix. Then step 12 is discuss with FSR possible terms, and 12 is when we're meeting together is actually say, okay, what will FSR come back with, to try and think about the other side of the story. So the negotiating matrix is what do we want. This item 12 would be okay if to think about what would FSR come back with, and what would we say if they came back. Item 13 is come up with the agreed to strategy. In other words, finalize the matrix. Number 14 is what I call agree to the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, which is if we can't reach agreement with FSR, what does the board want to do? Number 15 is select the negotiating team. Normally, it's a small group of people that the board empowers to do the actual negotiations on behalf of the board. Then 16, we actually will meet with FSR and start the negotiations. 17, we'll report back to the board on how it's going and receive any revised direction if it's appropriate. And we just keep repeating that process. The negotiating team keeps repeating that process until we come up with a final agreement. Then on 19, we'll report to the community as appropriate, how we're doing. Number 20 is provide that information to legal, provide results to legal, update the contract, review the updated contract, approve it, and move forward. Sign it. That's kind of the checklist steps, and we just need to put dates down on this thing and when we're going to get it. Obviously, the critical thing is getting the negotiating plan together and having a meeting to hammer this thing out.
Thank you. With that, I know I've asked everyone individually what dates they're available for an executive meeting within the next couple of weeks because of schedules and family commitments that are out of state. From what it seems at this time, unless anyone has a problem, we're looking at the 19th, so we could get an executive meeting together, which would be here at the school. What room, I don't know yet, but
Here at the school.
the college school.
Oh.
I do not know if anyone has any problem with that date, but that's the final date that I got with the majority. People could actually sit down as a board and get that done. Does anybody have any problems with that date at this time?
What time are we thinking?
It would be in the evening then, about 6 o'clock.
Okay, I'm fine with the date as long as it's, yeah, pretty much no earlier than 6.
Yeah, I was looking at 6, trying to give everyone enough time.
Yeah, my husband's gonna.
I understand.
Unless you want me to bring Raiden. As fun as he is, he gets in the way now.
Yes,
so.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, 6 p.m. I can do.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have a problem with the 19th? We are still,
That's a Wednesday, is it?
Yes.
yes. If we are good, if we could have a scheduled meeting location, I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. With that, do we have anything from the community at this time? Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a contingency plan if you and FSR do not have a meeting of the minds?
That's one of the steps in the process the board will talk about.
Right.
Okay.
It's about midway through the process.
Okay.
If both sides come to a loggerheads, we have to know when to literally say, it's been nice knowing you, we work great, but we gotta go. Whether we get to that point, we won't know till we get there. Yes, ma'am.
Are you still considering getting the community for the suggestions?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
Because the board is in charge and has been delegated by the community to handle all negotiations.
I thought Connie had suggested or.
So, yeah, so, and I did initially, I think part of the problem with that is if we have 20 people here, there's gonna be 20 different things, right? And when you're preparing your negotiations and documenting your plan, it's gotta be very specific. It's gotta be in the contract, it's gotta be negotiable, it's gotta have substance to it, you know, so you can say, okay, did we meet, did we exceed, you know, whatever. I mean, I guess if you have something specific that you're asking about, you can certainly tell us. You know, I mean, I don't see a problem with that. But it's, yeah, it's just it's very, negotiating is very specific.
And at the end of the day, this is a democratic process, much like you elect your elected officials to go to Phoenix and make decisions on your behalf. And you have, you have open forum, and you have email, and you have ways you can get us. And I mean, let's be real, we're all on the social media pages for the most part. We're seeing, we're aware we're taking it in, but if there's something specific, use those avenues to reach us. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision, and you, or maybe not you personally, but as a community, we were elected to make a decision on your behalf. On your behalf on this matter and everything else you come and see us making decisions on. So that's the process that we live in.
And thank you. And just to review finally,
We have one more.
we have one more, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I just want to clarify, I mean, I in no way want to be involved in the negotiations. I definitely don't want that. I mean, but I think, to have something where the homeowners can provide you feedback is probably what they're looking for. So how would you suggest they do that, other than, complaining or, giving kudos on social media? Is there a more defined process? Do they send an email to Robin about Robin saying share it with the board, or do they say send an email? Is that what you want to do? That's fine, but just is that what they should do is probably what we want to know.
Or come to speak in your open forum, but yes, an
Right.
email to the board,
Okay,
to
or
Robin.
come to an open meeting.
Yeah.
And pass it to the board, yes.
Okay.
No matter what it
Yeah.
says, it will be forwarded.
Yeah, no, I know it will. I just say, I wanna know what you guys are directing us, how we provide the feedback
If
to
you
you.
have something specific pertaining to the contract or anything else
Yeah,
having to
just
do with
say-
the HOA, those are your most direct
Yeah.
things.
That's all, just what is a way the voice can be heard?
Yeah.
That's all we wanna know.
And contractually, there is nothing in there about a person. So, if you send an email to Robin about something in the contract, it's not personal to Robin or Jennifer or anybody. It's in the contract, right? We don't call out names in contracts.
I hope not. Okay, just to make sure we have everything covered on action items, you will get us some information on the insurance. Let's see, we'll get finalization for the design review on the last couple of items. Let's see, vandalism reward policy is gonna be pushed out. Financial statements taken care of. We've already taken care of the things for the emails to the board from you. You'll be working on the volunteer force material for us. CDs are taken care of, and I don't think we have anything else unless I'm missing something.
What did we decide on Magma Road?
I'm sorry, say again?
What did we decide on Magma Road?
Send me
Deadline, what, so I know we're supposed to send you what we want, but are we making a decision?
the 25th.
So what I have for the 25th is a Magma Road offer, so I would need everything from the board on that
Okay.
quickly. The insurance renewal, the design guidelines, so you've got to get everything turned into me on that as well. I will work with Dana, Jennifer and I will work with Dana on getting that done. And then the charter, if I can, the charter for the volunteer force.
Anything else for good in order from the board? If not, it'd be an 8:03, this meeting is adjourned.